there's been some mixed reactions to the new collection scheme for household waste, which requires quite a strenuous amount of sort of sorting of rubbish and waste and refuse from householders. What would you say to some people that might be struggling with the new system?
Well, I have to say I'd be surprised now that if they were. Both Tony and I and other councillors tend to judge how successful something's been by how many phone calls you get. And when we had the rollout last October, we did get some activity on email, we got phone calls, we got personal visits about they didn't pick my bin up,
right,
and my bin's too big or too small and I don't know where I'm going to put it. And that lasted for about 3 to 4 weeks, and it gradually declined. Lots of folk, as you can understand, very concerned about the change. Lots of leaflets about what it is, where you put stuff, and lots of phone calls seeking clarification about it. But I think overall it's a good scheme. It's a unique scheme. It's one that's not yet rolled out anywhere else in the country. The fact that we set up our own partnership of councils doing it together. But the most significant thing, two things really for me, is one is the impact on ecology, because we're going to put less in the hole in the ground.
Yes.
Recycling has gone through the roof, and we're expecting recycling to hit 65 to 70% in the not too distant future, starting in around 30%. So a significant a step up in that respect. And the other one is driven by the European legislation in terms of landfill tax. Every year the government puts the landfill tax up per tonne, and therefore we're spending money literally putting it in a hole in the ground.
Right.
You can't do anything with it. That's the penalty, in that therefore the less you put in the ground, the less tax you pay.
I see.
And so the encouragement is then to get the recyclables, trade them on the open market, get some money for that as well, and find more effective ways of collecting the waste. There is a little bit more work, and we've got this tri-mingled bin where big bin that you can put all your recyclables, apart from glass, which has to be separated. That's very effective. I quite enjoy that. I'm sure Tony will want to tell you what it's like in the house.
On the pair of you, how are you finding it sort of at home in terms of getting this sort of the new system like at home, away from the office? How are the pair of you finding it?
I have to say I'm a little bit of a convert, because I had reservations at the start of it, because Verwood was one of the lucky areas that had the brown wheelie bin for garden waste as a free service.
I see.
And that was changing to a chargeable service, and other areas didn't receive that at all. And in my view, as most people generally do, I like what I've got, thank you very much, don't like change. However, I have to say I am fully converted onto the new system. The fact that all the smelly food rubbish gets taken away every week from a caddy is great. And I have a huge wheelie bin, because we've never had wheelie bins before for rubbish. I have a huge wheelie bin that we put all the paper, the card, the tins, the plastic, all go in together, and that gets collected once a fortnight. And then the other week of that fortnight, if you see what I mean, we get what we call the residual waste, which is everything that you can't then recycle, and that goes into a smaller wheelie bin.
Yes, I see.
And it's absolutely fantastic. And the way I've got around it inside the house, rather than having to keep going outside to a great big bin every time, is from my local supermarket, one where every little helps. Other supermarkets are available. I've bought a twin pedal bin for the kitchen, so one has recycling waste and the other has general household rubbish.
Yes.
And just two small bins, and they get emptied into the big wheelie bins. It works really well. It's a really good service.
Yeah, there are I guess maybe a few times where there could be exceptions to it working. In regards to the every fortnight for the residual waste, nappies for young families and with children, are there any plans to possibly refine the system in the future?
The answer to that is quite straightforward. When you initially do your questionnaire before your service comes on, if you've got a family with two youngsters in nappies, you say so, and you're given the means of them collecting the nappies separately, so that you can avoid that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There are ways around that. It's like people living in flats; they can't have wheelie bins, can they? But there are ways around that. And the second natural fact, the first rollout was Christchurch and most of East Dorset's main towns, and the second rollout is now. It's been happening for the last 2 weeks, People living in places like Hintermartle, for example, will now start getting the service. And again, I judge how successful it's been by how many calls I get. I've had a couple of calls and they've been sorted out. But I think you learn lessons, and I hope that the Dorset Waste Partnership have learnt lessons from the first rollout. I believe them, I'm certain they have. There'll still be issues that crop up that haven't cropped up before, but I think basically people are beginning to get used to it. And I was asked what I thought of it, and I said, well, I think it's the best thing that's never happened to you. When you start having to deal with that sort of thing, look at upon it, the fact that it's going to happen. I believe it's well organised, I believe it's a well-designed service. Let's make the best use of it as we can.
Yeah.
If I can just add, one of the keys to it is you talked about families with children with nappies, but also if you are a carer for perhaps an elderly relative that has the other end of the spectrum of need, or in flats, or you have a large family, the key issue is to contact the Waste Partnership, talk through what your individual needs are as a family, and they may well be able to find a slight variation of what you're given to suit your particular needs. You know, perhaps you live up the end of a long windy lane or something, there, or you're disabled and you can't do the wheelie bins. There may be a solution to help you. So I would always say to people, if you don't like the standard service, then make sure you talk to the Dorset Waste Partnership to see what can be done to make it easier for you.
Right.
And there is that flexibility.